getting into the Saturday prize picks and underdog slate. Real quick, I do want to give a recap of yesterday's slate. Did go 3 for 3, and it was a close one, and that's kind of why I'm bringing this up. 2 nights ago, Chris Middleton, I went to bed and Chris Middleton had got in his over fantasy score, and I was worried that was going to happen with Jalen Brunson. No, he got the over in that cash. So I went 3 for 3 yesterday. Pretty good stuff. Part of that, though, and it's more the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because there are certain days, and obviously got lucky to barely get the over here, but to get over. But there are certain days, certain props in which you can just kind of feel are going to be better or like more likely to hit. That was yesterday for me. I thought I made that clear in the video. So today is not exactly going to be that day, although we are getting a better amount of good props, I would say. At the same time, I wouldn't call them like locks or anything like that. I never like to call anything a lock, but I guess today, not as strong as yesterday, I don't think, but it is still stronger than any slate that we had prior to yesterday. So let's go ahead and get into it. And I do just want to start out with calling out some differences in some props that we are getting via the 9-to-5 cheat sheet. And so one thing I want to call out here is that when we compare prize picks to underdog, we are going to see we are getting a good amount of decent props, I would say, on underdog. And one of my favorite ones to start out with is actually going to be Tobias Harris here over fantasy score. And let's look into why. And so one thing I want to call out, this is going to be for points and rebounds. That's this prop right now. I guess I could find fantasy score for him here. There we go. Fantasy score. Really what I want to look at was going to be the projected minutes, because what I'm going to bring up is going to be Tobias Harris's per 36 production. And that is going to be because, well, I'm sure you guys heard Joel Embiid's going to be out. And because Embiid is out, this game is much more closely projected. And so with that, I would assume that the minutes for Tobias Harris are going to be closer to 36, maybe even gets up into 38 or so. I expect him to step up. And if we look at his per 36 production, his numbers that we are getting today are going to be the biggest differences compared to like Maxey, compared to Harden. It's kind of hoping we would maybe get like a Paul Reed prop. We're not, or even like a Milton prop. We're not getting that, or Melton, one of those two, because I could see them stepping up and getting more minutes. The prop that we are getting is going to be Tobias Harris. And I think the best one is going to be fantasy score. And I'm going to use PrizePicks just because I think their user interface is just better for an example, but want to make it clear on underdog, you'd want to bet the over fantasy score because we are getting a bigger prop difference there. And I think he's going to go over. Now, if you guys disagree with me here, that's fine. I'm just giving you guys information. But if you disagree, bet the under on PrizePicks because that's where you're getting the bigger edge. I think the bigger edge is going to be on the over on underdog, and that's kind of what I want to bring up. If you guys want to use that prop and you haven't signed up for underdog, there is a link in the description below. It gives you guys free money if you guys use that, and it kicks back money my way, so it's kind of just a way of helping out the channel. But looking at Harris, okay, his per 36 production averages 19.6 points. Okay, so we can already see that's going to be a little bit of an edge. 7.8 rebounds, so probably don't want to touch that. 3.1 assists, we're not getting an assist prop. But right off the bat, like we could potentially see maybe we would want to do points, rebounds, and assists because they are kind of disrespecting that prop. So you could do that. And he has been close to that or over that in 2 out of 3 games against Brooklyn now. And obviously that game against Brooklyn last time out was close. So, 23. And now with Embiid out, you kind of expect him to take that next step. So that's kind of intriguing to me there. But the biggest difference is that we are getting fantasy score for him at an extremely low number. His per 36 fantasy score production is around 37 fantasy points per 36 with Embiid off the court. And so on underdog, where the difference is, greater, a full 1 point difference there, that's a big edge there. That's a big projected edge. And I would say more times than not, probably 75 maybe percent of the time, he would be able to get over there. And so to me, that's a big number. That's a number that I like. I'm perfectly fine chase that number for Harris on underdog. And then while we're at it as well, looking at Drew Holiday there on underdog as well, still a very low number for Drew Holiday. Once again, I'm going to use PrizePicks as an example, and you could even kind of look at Middleton there as well. His fantasy score is a little bit too low. Now let's take a look at the point spread to see if they think Giannis is going to play. And given the fact that it is a 5-point spread, to me, that suggests that they don't believe Giannis is going to play. And so if he's not going to play, then that means the props that we are getting for Drew, for Brook, for Chris are all going to be a little bit too low. I'm going to use PrizePicks again as an example, but to me, all of this is actually then too low. And the thing with it is, like fantasy score wise, Drew has been crushing. He could still get the over. And that's kind of how I feel about Brook and Chris. Like literally, if Giannis plays, I still could see 2 out of the 3 getting there. And I would say if Giannis sits, I think we could almost lock in 2 out of the 3 getting there. And I hate to use that lock word. Figuring out which 2 it's going to be, that's kind of the difficult part. Like I said, 2 nights ago, I went to bed with Chris Middleton getting the over fantasy score, only to wake up to that having, I didn't even see if there was a stat change. It was very weird, actually. I'm not saying there was anything fishy going on. It's NBA, stuff gets corrected, but he also didn't get a foul or anything, so, which is weird. So my point there is like, yeah, all 3 of them could get there if Giannis sits. And like, if we look at the per 36 production with Giannis off the court, like we would want to be getting a Bobby Portis prop. Like I mentioned that in the last video. I kind of like with Luke Kennard as well. Like these players that I would want to be on if we knew we were getting the props, that's the difficult part. I don't know if we're going to get a Bobby Portis prop. He would be the one that we'd want to probably go in on the most because I'm assuming he's going to be disrespected, especially given the prop for like Drew. I would assume that the prop for Bobby Portis would be a little bit resembling what it is for Brook Lopez because they'd all be good. So, all right, let's get into Drew. So Drew Holiday, just looking at his per 36 production, 25 points per 36 with Giannis off the court, 5.7 rebounds, 9.1 assists, 1 steal, 2.8 free throws made. So potentially getting an edge there. And then his fantasy score is 46 fantasy points per 36. And so just to echo, if we are betting the over, we are doing that on underdog because we are getting a full 1.25 on underdog there. Prop different. It just makes it's a better play there. And that's going to be the same for Chris Middleton. Now, Chris Middleton's fantasy score is a little bit high, albeit. But you look at his per 36 production with Giannis off the court. Of starters, so excluding Bobby Portis' averages about 10 more fantasy points per 36 with Giannis off the court. Chris actually averages 9.3 more fantasy points per 36 with Giannis off the court. So this would still be a good prop because his per 36 production is 46.2 points. And maybe that's not the prop we want to chase. You could do points. Big difference there. Averages 25.6 points per 36 with Giannis off the court, 7 rebounds, and 7.7 assists. So right off the bat, we can see like we are getting an edge there in some capacity, whether it's points, rebounds, and assists, or heck, maybe even free throws made. If the game is a 5-point spread, who's going to be the one making free throws at the end of the game when Miami is fouling? It's going to be Chris Middleton. He does average 5.5 free throws made per 36 as well. So that's kind of my understanding is that they are undervaluing Chris Middleton, really because I think it's because of the season numbers. Because Chris, they were very conservative with his minutes. Like they did not want to give him a lot of minutes this season. And so last game against Miami, where it was a blowout, he only played 28 minutes. If you give him 36 minutes in that game, he's crushed. Okay. And I kind of expect that. They didn't need him to play well. And he did well. I mean, he only scored 16 points. You give him 5 more minutes, I think he gets up there. And so I think it's kind of the Chris Middleton game, just given the fact that they really didn't need too much of him. They didn't demand too much of him last game because everyone else was going off. And then lastly, it's kind of, and we're due to miss on this. We really are. I think we've hit like 6 for 6 on Brook Lopez, especially in this exact situation where it's like, all right, there's a Bucks player questionable. We're just defaulting to Brook Lopez being undervalued because of that. And then the Bucks player that's questionable does sit. And then we get kind of lucky, get a little bit bailed out, I guess, if you will. But it's been an educated guess. It's just strange. So with Giannis off the court, Brook Lopez averages 20.9 points per 36, 7.5 rebound, 1.5 assists, so not many there. And then like the fantasy score, it is higher, but he does average about 3 blocks as well. So if you give him a few more rebounds as well, like he should be able to crush in some capacity as well. Personally, I think I would rather go with the points, rebounds, and assists, but like fantasy score would work as well. And if we're looking at it, like, yeah, he had 34 minutes as well, but you give him 3 more minutes or so, like if he's playing a full allotment of minutes, crushes even more. And what's strange is he hasn't made a 3-ball in this series. Kind of expect that to get corrected today as well. Are we getting anything for that? And we're not. But the difference between Brook Lopez and like Middleton is that I believe Brook is being properly valued on the slate across both slates. Oh, and I don't think he has a fantasy prop for underdog as of recording this just yet. So probably just not touching that. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's touch on some other props that I also like as well. These are not going to be props that are going to be elite. I think kind of the good opportunity is going to be on underdog over fantasy points for Middleton, Drew, and Harris. And now these other ones are going to be ones that I could see working as well. Let's touch on those. So one prop that I could see hitting, and I don't love it, but kind of theory-wise it makes sense, would be Claxton over points scored. And that's with Joel Embiid off the court. And if you kind of were watching the game, like very soft call on Claxton, and I think that's going to make him more motivated to play well. Soft for him to be ejected, and honestly Embiid not be injected. I think that's going to motivate Claxton to play well tonight. and obviously doesn't have to go up against Embiid. That's going to be a much better scenario for him. But they did jack up his fantasy scores. So I was trying to find a prop that we could use. The one that I liked the most was I actually found this prop extremely interesting here for Russell Westbrook. 0.5 blocks over. I think this is a good prop. And for what it's worth, the sportsbooks are slightly favoring the over for block shots as well. Let's get into why I like it. So we do know that the Clippers are going to be without both Kawhi and Paul George tonight. That means Russell Westbrook is going to be playing a ton. And if you look at his per 36 production with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard off the court, it's not a big sample size. Let's make that clear. And I would rather get like 1.5 blocks and steals. Like if that was the prop, I'd much rather like that. But his per 36 production in blocks is 2 blocks per 36 with those two players off the court. Now, it's only a 100-minute sample size, not a big sample size. He does average 50 fantasy points per 36 as well, if you guys were curious. But his fantasy score is pretty jacked up. The best prop we could find associated with that was actually looking at 0.5 block. Not a bad prop. And now, he did not get there in the last game. Max over fantasy score, over 21.5 fantasy score or fantasy points. I still think it's the correct decision. He does have the most minutes with Tyler Hero off the court. Obviously, Tyler Hero broke his hand. He's not going to play. So that should mean that Strauss is going to get some minutes tonight. And so let's just pull up him. You know, he had 31 minutes in the last game, didn't need to play the extra rotation, only went 1 for 4 from 3. I'm not saying like we expect more from that, but you know, he didn't have a good night shooting. Only 8 points. He does average 11 on the season, averages 14 points per 36 with Tyler Hero off the court. So I'm expecting a better game from him. And if that occurs, I expect him to be able to get over the fantasy point. And so once again, his per 36 production is 25 fantasy points per 36 with Tyler Hero off the court. So not a bad prop. And then I want to touch on another situation in which we are getting a big discrepancy between the lines. So personally, it feels to me like both Bam and Jimmy Butler are being overvalued today. And because of that, I might bet the under on underdog. So I got a little bit of a Milwaukee Bucks stack that I could potentially run out. Brook Lopez over points, rebounds, and assists. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday over fantasy points. And I might tack in maybe Tobias Harris in there as well because I think that's a good one. But then I could bet the under for Jimmy Butler and Bam on underdog because we can see there's a big prop line difference between those two. And I think that'd be a big edge. If you guys disagree, if you think Jimmy Butler's going to have a big game, that's fine. But you look at his per 36 production with Tyler Hero off the court, and you know he's probably going to get more than 36 minutes, probably 38, Jimmy Butler. Then you could bet the over there, but it's rough to me, honestly. Only averages 47 fantasy points if we round up. So it should be close. And that's kind of one I just probably would more or less want to stay away from. And then Bam. I just feel like Bam's being overvalued. Going against Brook Lopez, I don't get the 40 points. I just don't. 40 fantasy points. That's a strange one to me. And then we do see some other ones that are popping up here, guys, with a big prop line difference. The biggest one that stands out to me here is actually looking at Maxey. Points and assists. We can see has 114 average sportsbook odds to get over 28.1 points and assists. Underdog has it set at 28. On PrizePicks, it's set at 27. And so to me, that is a pretty decent odd bet that we're getting now. It's only about a 50% chance to hit compared to basically a 50% chance to hit. So not a big difference, but still that stuff adds up. I don't mind that. That's more of a game stack play. And then also looking at like Spencer Dinwiddie as well. We're getting a full point difference here. And if you kind of think about it, Joel Embiid's not there. Another big body's not there. Should be easier for Dinwiddie to A, get to the basket, get a bucket, and then B, have some more assists. So that's one that I don't mind there as well. And then just so you guys can see, here are the best props on the board for today. Oh my goodness. Garrett Cole hits allowed. Let's see if that's, oh man. Garrett Cole, 4.5 hits allowed. Minus 150, that's a 56% chance to hit. That's a good one that just popped up as I'm recording this. Wow. I like that. We got James Harden over threes. If you guys want to take that, you can. Then we got a couple of decent NHL props there, 54% chance to hit. I'm perfectly fine taking those ones. That works. Let's see and God, it's always interesting how we don't get any underbets on underdog or on PrizePicks. Just strange. And then let's flip it around. Let's get into underdog just real quick. I'm gonna give you guys my bet of the day. Alec Baum, that's pretty good. 54% chance to get a base hit, projected to get a base hit. That's not bad. I mean, these are pretty good odds here for both these two. Freddie Freeman as well. One single. Oh, and even this one. And I don't like doing the single props. I mentioned that in the last video, but those are all pretty good odds that we are getting there. So you could potentially roll with those ones if you guys wanted to. Let's just sort by over percent, because this is also taking the under odds as well. So now you guys can see which ones are the best props there on Underdog. All right. That's great. So I spent all that time mentioning how the prop line for Tobias Harris on Underdog fantasy score is the way to go. Well, they bumped it. They bumped it. So I'm probably just, I still think it's a good bet, but now switch it up. I'd much rather bet on PrizePicks. The life of giving props content right here. I'm on stuff that switches mid videos. Super frustrating. Well, that kind of messes up my bet of the day a little bit there. I thought we were getting a big edge there with Harris. Gonna have to switch it up a little bit here. I'm gonna go with a little bit of a game stack. And so let's just say you bet a unit. I think the average unit size bet for someone is $5. I don't think that's really a hot take. Obviously, you can bet whatever. If this wins, $100 payout. Maybe you do insurance. That's kind of why I don't like to push Underdog too much, because if one misses, you're kind of out of luck. But I also don't like to put a number on it because I don't know what people are betting. I don't want to put a number out there as to what they should be betting either. That's not up to me. That's up to you guys and your bankroll management. But looking at it, I do think that these props kind of correlate a little bit. Once again, if Giannis is out, these are going to be good numbers. Okay. And then sure, if Giannis sits, I do think Jimmy Butler and Bam have a much better likelihood to hit theirs. At the same time, if the Bucks are rolling like they did in game 2, in game 3 here, I could see the exact same scenario that we had last game. And then for what it's worth, if Giannis plays and he is healthy, I would say that this is too low of a number there as well. But given the sportsbook odds, I'm not expecting him to play. And just as an FYI, I will be betting Harris now on PrizePicks for over fantasy score. Missed out on Underdog. That's life of giving content, unfortunately. But hopefully you guys had a good slate yesterday. Hopefully we have a good slate today. Good luck today. And as always, let's keep cashing. Oh, if you guys want to join 9 to 5, $10 a month gives you access to the cheat sheet as well as the fantasy golf product as well. All right, thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.